What if leaving the only place you ever knew felt safer than staying another day among people who wanted you gone? Anna Whitlow's hands shook as she tied down the last canvas over her wagon. The sky above Redemption Flats was still dark, the stars fading into a cold silver blue that came right before dawn. Her breath rose like small ghosts in the icy air. Everything she owned fit into 3 wooden crates, and even that felt like too much weight for a woman running from hurt. She didn't leave a note. There was no one who would bother reading it. The town was silent. Windows closed. Doors locked. In 3 long years, she had learned that a town could freeze a person out long before winter ever arrived. She climbed onto the wagon seat, the reins rough in her cold hands. The leather was stiff, cracking in places. She snapped them once, and the horse pulled forward, hooves crunching on frozen mud. At the edge of town, she paused. Just once. The schoolhouse stood on her left, small and dark. She had taught children to read there until their mothers decided she was a poor influence. A widow at 25 was enough for them to whisper about. A woman who didn't break under their disapproval was even worse. A sudden sound sliced through the quiet. Hoofbeats, low. Steady. Anna turned. A rider sat on the ridge above town, tall and broad-shouldered, shadowed against the rising dawn. She knew him at once. Grant McCoy, the man who owned half the county. The man who spoke less than a fence post. The man everyone called powerful but lonely. "Leave me be, Mr. McCoy," she called, her voice firm even though her heart hammered. He didn't answer. He nudged his horse forward, closing the distance like he had all the time in the world. "Road's dangerous for a woman alone," he said. His voice was low and rough like wind dragging over stone. "So is staying." She snapped the reins. The wagon lurched. She didn't look back, but she heard him follow. The sun rose blood red over the plains. Long shadows stretched across the frozen ground. Out here, running only meant you died tired. But she would take tired over trapped any day. Grant McCoy kept his distance. Not close enough to crowd her. Not far enough to let her go. 10 miles out, the canyon pass narrowed into a thin trail between high stone walls. Wind howled through the gap, sharp and cold. Anna pulled her shawl tighter, watching the path ahead. Then the wagon jolted to a stop. A cottonwood tree lay across the trail, massive and freshly cut. Axe marks gleamed white against the dark bark. Her stomach sank. Someone had blocked the road on purpose. Grant rode up beside her and dismounted. He pressed a gloved hand to the fresh cuts. "Someone doesn't want you leaving quiet," he said. Her throat tightened. Redemption Flats had spoken loud and clear. "You're ours to judge, not yours to escape." Grant pulled an axe from his saddlebag. "Best get to work." "I didn't ask for your help." "No, ma'am," he said calmly, "but you've got it anyway." He swung the blade in smooth, powerful arcs. Wood splintered. Anna stared for a moment, then climbed down from the wagon. Pride wouldn't move a tree. She dragged branches aside while he chopped. His gloves were neat, his boots too fine for hard labor, but there was nothing soft about the strength behind every swing. An hour later, the trail was clearer. Anna wiped sweat from her forehead. Her breath burned from the cold and effort. "Why do you care if I leave?" she asked. Grant leaned on the axe handle. For a long moment, he just looked at her. "Maybe I'm tired of watching good people get chased off," he said. She wanted to tell him he was wrong, that she wasn't good, that she wasn't worth defending. But the words wouldn't come. He mounted his horse. She climbed back onto the wagon. The road was open again. But he still followed. By afternoon, the sky had darkened into a bruised purple. Heavy clouds rolled across the plains, slow and threatening. Snow began falling. Hard. Wind pushed sideways, sharp enough to sting her face. An abandoned line shack appeared on the left, half hidden by scrub pine. Grant pointed toward it. "We need to stop. I've weathered worse alone. Not in this, you haven't." Anna pushed the horse faster. The wagon lurched over rocks. A sudden crack split the air like a gunshot. The left wheel struck a boulder and shattered. The wagon jerked violently. The horse panicked. Grant was off his mount in seconds. He grabbed the bridle, calming the frightened animal with low, steady words. Anna's hands were locked around the reins, knuckles white. He crouched, inspected the wheel, and said nothing. He simply pulled rope, and a spare spoke from his saddlebag and got to work. He fixed the wheel as the blizzard roared around them. No demands, no expectations, just steady hands in a storm trying to keep her alive. When the wind grew too fierce to stand against, he looked at her. "Inside," he said. This time she didn't argue. The shack was small, one room with a dirt floor and an old stone fireplace. But it had a roof, a door, 4 walls against the blizzard. Grant built a fire fast, careful and skilled. Flames rose, warm and golden. Anna stayed as far from him as the room allowed. "You think money makes you better than folks?" she asked sharply. "No," Grant said. "I think money makes folks assume I never hurt." Quote, his voice was quiet, too quiet. He took off his coat and draped it over a broken chair. "For later, when you stop being stubborn." Hours passed. The storm raged. The fire burned low. The cold crept in. She reached for the coat. It smelled like leather and smoke, and something safe. She fell asleep sitting up, back against the wall. Grant stayed awake all night, feeding the fire and keeping the cold from swallowing the room. Morning came. They had survived, but the world outside was buried in snow 3 feet deep. The door was frozen shut. They weren't going anywhere. Anna woke to the smell of real coffee. Not the weak, bitter mix she had been drinking for months, but honest, rich coffee. She blinked against the warm glow of the fire. Grant crouched near it, a battered tin pot resting on the coals. The room was still cold, but the warmth from the flames made it bearable. "Morning," he said. She sat up slowly. The coat had slipped from her shoulders during the night. She folded it carefully and set it on the chair. Grant nodded toward the door. "Frozen solid. We'll have to thaw it before we can get out." Anna joined him at the door with a coal he set on a stick. Together they pressed the glowing ember along the frame. Ice melted, dripping onto the floor. His strength forced the door when it loosened, and her patience guided the heat. At last the door groaned open. The world outside was silent and white, almost glowing under the pale sun. Snow covered everything. Drifts swallowed the wagon wheels. The trail was a blanket of untouched white. "We're stuck," Anna said softly. "For now." Grant stepped out and tested the snow. It came up nearly to his knees. He walked slow circles around the shack, studying the ground, the drifts, the wagon. Anna watched him, her breath hanging in the cold air. She had never expected anyone to stand beside her in a storm, not like this. "Why did you follow me?" she asked. Grant stopped walking. He looked at her with something heavy in his eyes, something she didn't recognize. "I had a daughter," he said. "Emily. She died 3 winters ago. Fever took her." Anna's breath froze in her throat. "My wife," she blamed herself. The town blamed her too, said she hadn't prayed hard enough, said losing Emily was God's judgment. His jaw tightened. They talked around her, at her, about her, drove her out with cold shoulders and whispers. Anna swallowed, the pain in his voice cutting deeper than the wind. "I stayed," he said bitterly. "I told myself I had to. I had money, land, a name. But truth is, I stayed because I was a coward. I let them destroy her. I let her leave alone. And she died alone." His hands closed into fists. "So when I saw you loading that wagon in the dark," he said softly, with that same look she had, "I couldn't let it happen again." Anna's throat tightened. Her voice shook when she spoke. "My husband died in a mine collapse. I was 22. The preacher said it was God's punishment on me. The women said I was too bold. The men—" She breathed in slowly. "The men looked at me like they had a right to me just because I had no one." They stood in the snow, 2 people who'd been broken by the same kind of cruelty. Grant nodded. Then you know why I followed. The fire crackled behind them. Outside, the snow glimmered like scattered stars. Anna picked up his coat and slipped it on. It hung past her hands, warm and safe. "Thank you," she said softly. "That was all," Grant nodded. "We'll start digging out tomorrow." But tomorrow brought more trouble. By the time they freed the wagon from the snow, the repaired wheel had cracked. The cold had split it straight through. Anna's stomach twisted. "So we go back." Grant shook his head. "Not unless you want to. There's another option." She looked at him, guarded. "There's a homestead 20 miles north," he said. "Empty since last spring. Owner died. No family left. Cabin's good. Land's better. It's mine." Suspicion rose in her chest like a wall. "Why tell me this?" Quote, "Because I can sign it over," he said quietly. "Give you a chance. A real one." Anger flared so sudden it startled her. "Why? Out of pity? Guilt? You think I'll share your bed in return?" Grant flinched like she'd struck him. "No," he said steadily. "I think you deserve a choice nobody's given you." Her breath shook. "And what do you get?" she demanded. "Maybe a chance to do one thing right," he said. "For once in my life." Silence pressed around them like snow. Finally, Anna whispered, "Show me." They traveled north. The homestead appeared at sunset. A cabin. A creek. Land wide and open. Something stirred in Anna's chest. Something like hope and fear tangled together. She took one step inside and saw the cracked windows, the old fireplace, the strong walls. It wasn't much. It was everything. Grant didn't wait for her answer. He started fixing the fence. Anna found a rusted saw and worked beside him. The rhythm was steady, almost peaceful. It felt like the beginning of something she didn't dare name, but peace never lasted long. A young rider came tearing down the ridge, breathless. "Mr. McCoy," he called. "Sheriff sent me. Says you're needed back in town. Land dispute. Urgent. And ma'am," his voice shook, "they're saying you stole that wagon." Anna felt the world tilt. "I paid for it," she said. $2. Quote, "Town's memory gets real short when it wants to," Grant said quietly. The boy looked sorry, scared. "Sheriff says if you don't come, he'll send deputies." Grant looked at Anna. "We go back together. I'll straighten it out." Anna's heart pounded. Fear and anger battled inside her. Redemption Flats had thrown her out once. Now it wanted to drag her back in chains. But running meant letting them own the truth. She lifted her chin. "Let's go." They rode south, back toward the people who had judged her, back toward the lies that had followed her for years. But she wasn't alone anymore. She wasn't riding back as the woman they broke. She was riding back to break the story they told about her. And Grant McCoy rode beside her, steady as the sunrise. They reached Redemption Flats at sundown. The sky glowed orange and purple as the last light dipped behind the hills. The main street was full. People stood on porches and in doorways, watching, whispering, waiting like they were starving for drama. Anna felt their eyes on her like sharp needles. She kept her back straight, her hands steady on the reins. Grant rode beside her, close enough their stirrups almost touched, a silent shield. Sheriff Drummond stood in the middle of the street, broad and gray-bearded, hand resting on his holster. "Miss Whitlow," he called. "You'll answer for that wagon." Anna opened her mouth, but Grant was already off his horse. He stepped forward, calm but firm. "No need," he said. "Wagon's mine. Paid for, legal, she owes nothing." A wave of murmurs swept through the crowd. Anna saw the livery owner scowling, saw Reverend Carver, always watching, always judging, standing with his arms crossed like a stone pillar of disapproval. "It ain't about the wagon, McCoy," the preacher said. "It's about decency. That woman's brought nothing but trouble. She don't belong here." Anna felt the familiar sting, the same words they'd thrown at her for years. She braced herself, ready to fight. But Grant spoke first. "You're right," he said loudly. Silence hit the street like a dropped anvil. "She doesn't belong in a town that blames its sins on whoever is easiest to hurt." Quote, gasps rippled through the crowd. The preacher's face reddened with anger. Grant continued, voice steady and loud enough for every person to hear. 3 years ago, when my daughter Emily died, this town blamed my wife, said she wasn't godly enough, said it was her fault. His voice tightened. You drove her out with gossip and cold stares, and I didn't stop you. I let you destroy her. I let her leave alone. Anna's breath caught. The crowd shifted uneasily. And now, Grant said, you're doing the same to Anna Whitlow. Dozens of eyes swung toward her, some guilty, some angry, some confused. Anna's worked harder, suffered more, and stood taller than any of you, Grant said. She's worth 10 times what this town ever gave her. Anna felt her chest shake. No one had ever spoken for her like this. She dismounted and walked to stand beside him. I don't need your town, Anna said, her voice clear. I don't need your approval. I came back because I won't let you call me a thief when you stole my peace long before I touched that wagon. Quote, she pulled a small leather pouch from her pocket. It clinked when she dropped it at the sheriff's boots. Payment for the wagon. With interest. I owe nothing. She turned to walk away. Grant moved to follow, but a voice called out, wait! Miss Hadley, the schoolteacher, stepped forward. Her gray hair fluttered in the wind. I'm coming with you, she said. I'm tired of teaching children kindness while grown people forget it. Anna stared, stunned. Then Samuel and Rose, the young couple who always looked like life was too heavy, stepped out of the crowd. Then Mr. Calloway, the widower. One by one, 3 people became 4. Then 5. 5 souls leaving the safety of the crowd to stand beside her. Where to? Grant asked softly. Anna took a deep breath. North, she said, to the homestead. They mounted up, 5 riders leaving the judgment behind them. 5 riders choosing something new. They did not look back. A month later, the valley was alive. Snow melted. Wildflowers bloomed. The creek sang in the warm breeze. 4 cabins stood where there had been only one. Smoke curled from chimneys. Laughter carried across the trees. Miss Hadley taught children under a pine. Samuel and Rose planted a garden. Mr. Calloway carved toys on his porch. Anna stood on the new porch Grant built. She held a cup of coffee and watched the sun rise over her land. Their land. Grant rode in with a wagon full of lumber. He tipped his hat like he did every morning. Morning, he said. Morning. She watched him unload lumber with Samuel, worked alongside Rose, drank coffee with Mr. Calloway, a small community built from hurt and hope. Grant climbed the porch steps, wiping sweat from his brow. You staying then? He asked quietly. It was the first time he had asked. Anna looked out over the cabins, the children laughing, the creek glimmering. She smiled softly. Reckon I am? His eyes warmed. He sat beside her. The silence between them felt safe now. You know, Anna said, watching the valley, I almost missed all this. I was so busy running. Grant nodded. Staying takes more courage than leaving. She looked at him. The afternoon sun lit the silver in his hair. You taught me something, she said. What's that? That it's never too late to do the right thing. Grant's eyes softened. And you taught me something too. What? That family isn't blood. It's the people who show up when the storm hits. Anna reached for his hand. He took it without hesitation. I'm glad you followed me, she whispered. I'm glad you let me, he said. They stood side by side as the sun dipped low, painting the valley gold. Voices drifted from the cabins. Laughter. Hammering. Life. Anna leaned her head against Grant's shoulder, his arm wrapped around her, steady and warm. Together, they walked back to the cabin. Firelight glowed from inside, soft and welcoming. Anna Whitlow had tried to leave town, tried to disappear, but Grant McCoy had refused to let her vanish. He'd shown her something she thought she had lost forever, a place to belong, a chance to start again, a family worth staying for. And together they built a life that held, a life that finally felt like home.